Dive comp is all the rage in Overwatch right now, but I think there are a lot of floating misconceptions about how to play the comp correctly that I want to demystify here today. What's going on, guys? It's FREEDO here for Your Overwatch, and the first thing that we're going to jump into is that you don't have to dive first. This is what I think is the most widely misunderstood concept of, quote, dive comp, is that some players play Winston, or I get teammates when I'm on Winston who expect the Winston player to have to be pressing shift every time it's off cooldown, and that is a big mistake. If you do decide to jump first, you're committed entirely into that fight. The enemy can then use their resources to punish whatever positioning you take. Now, there has been a version of dive comp that probably wants to be fighting more than I'm going to be suggesting you do so, and that's when you have a Zarya instead of another tank, because of course, Zarya needs charge. So if you put Winston in the face of something constantly and she keeps getting Zarya charge, then yeah, you can dive a little bit more aggressively because you need to be taking damage for Zarya for her to get pumped up. But in every other instance of dive comp, you don't want to be over-engaging, and oftentimes at the start of fights, I won't even jump into the fight, because I've watched carefully how pros play Winston in their dive comp or play Winston as the sole tank. And with that being the case, it isn't who dives first that makes the play, it's who dives better, who takes the better engage. And of course, if you use your cooldown for a jump too early, you won't have it to either reposition or to punish a threat. Sometimes it's okay to just stand and hold a position and wait for the opening to come to you to set up that initiation cleanly, because what you're looking for isn't to deal damage to the enemy tanks, of course. Winston especially is bad against tanks, but dive comps in general aren't high damage tank busting comps. They use their mobility to get in on the key targets, but they have to expose themselves and spread out for you to be able to do so. So giving it that little bit of extra time for the play to develop, to find the key target, and let the tunnel visioning of your enemy team, who are distracted on too many other different targets, start to develop so that when you do decide to go in, it's clean, neat, and on point, instead of just feeding your body immediately into the enemy team's wrath. Now, my next misconception is that you often aren't playing in a dive comp, in matchmaking at least. If your team is not playing with a Lucio, which happens far too often in matchmaking, when your Winston jumps in, his friendly teammates that obviously don't have the best mobility ability in the game can't keep up with him. So that means, counterintuitively, the proper way to dive in as Winston is to let your team have a little bit of ranged poke to set up to be able to be in a position to be close enough so that they either can run up with you or speed boost to get up to you when you make your dive. The timing of the contact of Winston jumping in and his teammates having line of sight into the relevant points of the fight is all the difference. Far too often do you see a Winston that has this idea that, well, I'm a dive character, I have to just dive constantly, and if I don't, I'm not doing my job, who's just feeding the enemy because your team isn't even around the corner yet, and you jump far into the enemy death ball. Well, you just gave them a gift pinata for them to beat, and Winston's gonna explode and candy's gonna fall out. All things considered, this sounds like a good idea, but you don't want to be doing that. And even more specifically, when you're in a multi-DPS comp, and Winston is your sole tank, this responsibility of restraint is even bigger. Typically with multiple DPS, you're gonna have a ranged threat, you're gonna have some flankers, and you kinda have to give them time to make space to find duels and find range and let them do their job without just feeding into the fight. This type of Winston playstyle is gonna take a lot more patience and puts the game into your teammates' hands largely, and you're there more so to fend off flanker threats or to pounce opportunities as they develop, but you're not this tip of the spear that's just constantly in the battle. Winston's far too squishy to play that way, unless of course you're playing with the Zarya dive comp thing, which is totally different, like I said before. Now, the last misconception of dive comp that I have to bring up is a phrase I hear far too much in matchmaking, is that we don't have enough healing. Unfortunately, I think this is a holdover from the days of OP healing multi-tank, which many players I think are still stuck in, and it's this leaning on the crutch to be able to make mistakes and have your healers fix them for you. I'm sure many of the healers in the comment section down below will talk about how horrific it is when your teammates are over-facing into the fight, taking far too much damage for no reason, and expecting you to just mend all wounds, as if you have infinite ability to heal everything. No. Dive comp does not need a lot of healing. You can potentially play it with an Ana, but it's best when played with a Zenyatta, with incredibly low amounts of healing in an offensive comp. That Zenyatta puts a Discord orb out, you pick the target and engage properly, and if you follow the other rules that I've already mentioned in this video, you're going to have a much better time. It's about focus fire and precise, short team fights. You might die, yes, but because you're playing with lethal flanker characters, the design of the composition is to frag out quick and have characters like Genji and Tracer who can really clean up the late fight. Once you trade out a couple threats, really, the mobility characters in the game will spin circles around whatever's left, and that's the situation you want to build for yourself. If you're playing a dive comp with the expectation that you're just going to heal your way to victory, you're sorely mistaken. Instead of expecting healing to bail you out of bad engagements, instead, learn good engagements and how to play your characters in a way where you don't take damage. You have to navigate the maps carefully. You have to choose your engagements properly. You can't overface and take a relevant poke, for instance. Worry about fixing all of those things far and away before you even think about worrying about pumping healing into your dive comp, because if that's your strategy, you're doing it backwards. Instead, go on ahead and move on to playing multi-tank, because it's still a viable strategy, not as good, I think. But if that's how you want to play the game, play a comp that actually works for doing that playstyle. And of course, the last misconception about dive comp is not diving at all. I think it's more likely that players are too over-eager to just go in way too early and don't wait for a play to develop, but also the converse answer can be bad as well. Know that you're looking for key targets to split themselves off, and when you see those plays, you have to go for it. It's okay to go up to the Choke of Hanamura, take a look around, see how things are set up for like a second, pick a target, then go. You don't have to necessarily just jump in at first sight and then land somewhere that's useless. You can take stock of things, but you also have to be able to find that play and then go for it. Guys, I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe because we upload each and every day, so you're gonna wanna hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description, you can check out our Twitter and our Discord page where you can interact with our community and find teammates to pair up with. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.